What is your biggest fear right now? Firing an employee is hard. Keeping a toxic employee in your team is hard. Choose your hard. Apathy is the biggest thing that any business has to contend with when they're adopting new things. The pain just has to be big enough. I completely removed him as the bottleneck. There is a huge distance between the people with the information and the people with the power.
Heather Elkington is emerging as one of the biggest names in small business leadership. After an entrepreneurial career that saw her transition from managing Harrods to scaling and exiting a SaaS business to a major tech company, Heather has now started her own entrepreneurial journey, supporting aspiring leaders with a proven blueprint for excellence in leadership. She has a book coming out and has also become the go-to source for leadership guidance in the accounting tech industry. All that, and she's still in her 20s. Piece of advice, grab a pen and paper for this one. Let's go. So in your experience, how well are accounting and bookkeeping firms generally doing with implementing tech and realizing all of the value that they wanted to see for themselves and for their clients at the minute?
Yeah. So when running GoProposal, software in the accounting tech space, we always said we didn't have any competitors apart from apathy. So, and this isn't just accountants and bookkeepers, by the way, this happens in every single business up and down the globe, which is apathy. We can give you the tools and education. Any piece of software can give you the tools and education needed to make this thing a success. But if that firm doesn't implement them and spend time like making them work in the business, we will see like huge amounts of apathy, and the pain just has to be big enough. So I don't know if you've heard of something called the region beta paradox. We used to talk about this a lot. So the region beta paradox essentially states that you will come off better from a worse situation. So you will have better outcomes if the worse your situation is. So if you kind of put this into accountancy and bookkeeping firms, it is that if you are kind of, this firm over here is run of the mill, like maybe got a few members of staff, they're making a profit, albeit not a great one. They can pay their team, but they can't really invest in anything crazy, but they're managing to pay their mortgage. They're maybe just not feeling great about themselves when they go home from work. But on the other side, you've got this firm over here who is struggling to pay the rent. They are then barely making a single bit of profit. Their clients don't respect them. The marriage is breaking down because they go to home at the end of the day and they don't have enough money to cover the mortgage. This firm over here, albeit in way more pain, will be much more likely to take action, do something drastic, and make a change. So we'll be therefore way more likely to take on something like, we'll just use GoProposal as an example, to implement that piece of software, replace every single one of their clients, start investing in the team, and just turn things around. So the region beta paradox, we all need to be massively aware of it because it like impacts us all, says that if you're in just this average situation where things aren't great, but nothing is hugely painful, you are in a worse place because you're not going to get yourself out of it. And we would see that all the time. And I'd imagine every accountancy tech vendor, it's a mouthful, will see the same thing in that firms, unless they're in a huge amount of pain, won't often break through and kind of make huge changes. So in my experience, apathy is the biggest thing that we've had to contend with, and any business, accountancy, bookkeeping, or otherwise has to contend with when they're like adopting new things in a business, moving forward, trying to be innovative. And from experience, it's a very small amount of firms who do that kind of thing. But it's great for everyone to be aware of, anyone running a business, because you can get ahead of the curve if you become aware of that and kind of know like, how are you going to force yourself to make changes, be innovative, adopt things, even when the pain isn't that bad. The way firms can really get ahead is when things are actually good. So when you feel as though, you've taken on a few new clients, you've repriced a few, you feel as though things are good. Most people then sit still and go, actually, I'm enjoying this now. I'm going to keep going as it is. That's the time to drive forward because you don't have to worry too much about what's in the bank account. You've not got huge pains at home, but that's when apathy can creep in and it can get real. Like, you can really start to slow down and give it a year or two and you'll be in the painful place.
Just on that theme, I think it was John Cotter that wrote it, was saying, well, actually, it's probably worthwhile for the senior leaders to let things break and almost
Mhm.
like manufacture a bit of a catastrophe to then snap everybody out of that complacency. But would you go so far as to do something like that in the firm, or is that maybe a bit drastic?
Not necessarily let things break, but uh, so when this is a great, like, leads us into a great leadership principle, which is one of you shouldn't rescue your team.
Right?
And so business owners tend to have this idea that they've made lots of mistakes in the past, and therefore they want to help their team to not make the same mistakes. And then what will happen is they'll save them from making the mistakes. They won't let them, and as a result, they'll think everything's running smoother in the business. But what they've actually done is create a team that are very much like bubble wrap. And if ever anything does go wrong, they then don't know how to deal with it. And then the business owner will get frustrated because they're like, why do the team just not understand the same things as I do? I feel like I'm doing this all on my own. And actually, there's a huge power in allowing people to make mistakes, not flip it over and say, don't steal them of a learning. So
Okay.
when you can almost feel a member of the team, like going down a road that you think, feel as though I've been down this before and I'm not sure it's the right place to go, feel free to help them, like, almost give them guidelines with the decision making and help them to see bias and things like that. So if you can see that, like, if you've got experiences that can help them make a better decision, give them that, but you have to let them mess up. It's really hard to sit by because you can watch your business like have these tiny little bumps in the road, tiny little mistakes. But what you'll see is instead of it, you'll see it go like this, but it will constantly be on the up. And you'll create like a team of entrepreneurs, which is an entrepreneur, but
Okay.
working within the business. You'll create a team of entrepreneurs who are used to making their own mistakes, will have all the learnings that the business owner will have, and can therefore like work in the same way that a business owner can. So
Does that
I wouldn't manufacture them, but just don't allow, when you see the opportunity for it, just allow them to make the mistake. Instead of, usually what would happen is the business owner would like tell someone off or discipline them for making a mistake. Just celebrate it. Amazing. So glad you found that out yourself. What a great new part of your like personality, a great new part of who you are because you've made that mistake.
sort of, I think, speaks to a wider problem in firms as well, doesn't it? Because I've heard this, and I'm sure you will have heard this lots, that firms complain sometimes that their staff don't take initiative, or they don't try things, or they don't experiment, or they don't pick things up and run with them. And they always come back to that person. I guess maybe the like, part of what I'm getting from what you're saying there is this sort of almost learned dependency that gets built in with these interactions where we keep solving problems for each other. But if a firm really wants to push that responsibility downwards, or say a firm owner, because like you said earlier on, like there's a pain point that someone will feel will snap them out of that apathy. It probably isn't going to be felt by everybody at the same time, right? So there's going to be one person that practice says, right, we need to change, but now we need to get everybody else on board as well. Like, how can people start to empower their teams to drive that stuff forward themselves rather than it all landing on their own shoulders?
Yeah, there's lots to unpack there. The challenge in most companies is the same, and I know we're talking about accountants and bookkeepers, but this is relevant across the board. The challenge in most companies is the same in that there is a huge distance between the people with the information and the people with the power. So the people with the information are the people who are working in the company. They're talking to the clients, they're responding to the emails, they are running the processes and systems. People with the information. The people with the power are generally the leaders, the business owners, sometimes a senior leadership group, and they're the ones making decisions. And so we've got all these like outdated cultural leadership principles that'll tell you that the leaders should be making decisions, giving orders, and that the people here should just be listening and taking those orders. Ultimately, these people holding tight and like not letting go of control. But by holding on to that control, the people with the information, the team, have no control over decision making power. So, say, for example, they see within a system or a process something regularly is going wrong. They're regularly saying something to clients that the clients are getting annoyed about, or they are running a service that is taking way longer than it should do, and the firm therefore isn't charging enough. But because the people up here decide what's being charged, what service, what we charge for what service, but the people down here know actually it's taking way longer than it's supposed to, you end up with this huge disconnect between like making decisions based on just generally ego and like their experience that is maybe outdated and a bit old, and the people with the information just get held down. So that ship needs to be turned around. We did this within Go Proposal. So we were completely, James Ashford as founder, I completely removed him as the bottleneck to decision making and anything like that from the business. And ultimately, we wanted to free James up because he's an incredible guy, as you'll know, incredible visionary, great at public speaking, incredible on podcasts. And we needed his time to be spent on those things. So we had to free him up. And because of that, we had to get the entire team like updating systems. We had to get them making decisions day to day. We had to get them coming up with the ideas, understanding culture and leadership and when to turn things around. We grew rapidly. We sold the company to Sage. You know, all these things. So I guess a few steps, and honestly, I could go on about this for hours. A few key steps that I'll tell you that you need to start with, which is, first of all, to get your team acting like entrepreneurs and to get them like acting like the business owner and as the business owner would want them to, because they'll be thinking, oh, but no one cares as much as I do. So how can I get them working like that? The first step is you need to, if you expect them to act like that, you need to treat them like that. And there's something very simple that you can do, which is open up the books. This is I learned this in a book called No Rules, which is about Netflix's culture. And by opening up the books, and what I mean by that is all the like really nitty gritty P&L information, every single thing your company's spending, every bit of revenue that you're making, like whether you're hitting targets or not, open it all up and let the entire company see that. Because once you start getting them thinking that way, it's just a small step and it feels really scary because it's quite vulnerable for most business owners. But once you start getting the team seeing that, understanding that every bit of money that they spend comes off the profit line, every single client that they give a discount to is coming off the profit every time, or like put more positively, if they can upsell a client, that's going to hugely impact the investment that we can make on something else. So business owners will be frustrated because they'll be like, but my team just don't care as much as I do. They would never act like entrepreneurs. We'll just ask, are you treating them like entrepreneurs first and foremost? And that's just something really simple you can do. And it'll take a few months for them to get in the rhythms of it, but open up the books and start reporting on those things. So like talk through them monthly, like make sure the team understand it all. Another step is to know your fighters. So like know the people that you've got in your team. You can do this really simply by using like a profiling report. I know lots of people use Disc one. We used one called the Contribution Compass by Marianne Page. But when you do the profiling reports, what you tend to see is a team that all like are a bit frustrated and don't know how to communicate with each other and feel like they've got to be super professional all the time and use telephone voices and things like that. So when you do this profiling report, everybody like drops their guard because you end up seeing, oh, that person that I thought was really moody actually just communicates in a different way to me and prefers not to be disturbed at this time of day. Or that person over there that really annoys me because they're so loud, actually they're just a real like creator type, and let's see how we can use that. By doing those first two things, a business owner will already have like a great snapshot of who they've got in a team and like starting to get people working like entrepreneurs. There's way more steps I could go on about this, but next, I'll try and go through it a bit quicker. You need to then start delegating. So the business owner, you need a really accurate job description for yourself. When I say accurate, like every 3-minute job that you do needs to be on this job description. You need to like tasks, emails, like how much time you spent doing emails, social media, are you doing that? Talking to clients, get a real accurate representation of what you're doing day to day. And then you need to green, amber, red them. So anything that's green, high level visionary stuff. So for James, as an example, that would have been public speaking, being on podcasts, joining like annual vision meetings to help us set the vision for the company. And then amber is things that one day we want to get rid of, but maybe it's not like we've not quite got the money to delegate those things yet. And then red is these things need to come off your plate because it's an absolute waste of time for the business owner. Um,
Right.
and you'd push those down into the team members and now you know them properly, so you'll know which jobs work best with which people. So for example, social media. Most accountancy firms will assume, oh, my team are accountants, they don't want to get involved in social media. I guarantee everyone will have, and I'm not even going to stereotype by the generation. I was about to say Gen Z, but like it doesn't even matter. Someone in their team who loves using social media, who's really good at using social media, and might want to spend 10% of their job actually running the company social media. Like that's how I got into social media. I was doing a completely different job, and the business owner was like, "This is too much for me. I need someone to take it on." And I was like, "Yeah, that I really want to do that." But you'll never know that until you start asking these questions and passing these things down. Start with the small stuff, move right up to the big stuff, um, and eventually you will get to the point where you've got a team who are operating like entrepreneurs. Everyone understands each other and how they communicate and what they're best at, and the business owner can be freed up to do these really high level visionary things. And you just constantly, and it will be a constant battle working to push down the tasks that keep creeping onto different people's plates, push them down into other team members just to where people work best.
But presumably, as you're pushing that work down, the team then are stretching up to take that stuff off you, right? So they're getting more challenges, more enriching work. And presumably, if you're basing that based on their personality types and stuff that they want, it's going to be work that they enjoy, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously, you have to plan into this revenue growth and hiring. So like you can't just, there's going to be things that you're either going to have to get rid of completely because the reason when business owners feel that pain and decide they want to make a change, they are going to have to, like, what are we doing that is having no impact?
Yeah.
What are we doing day to day? Is it we're spending 4 hours in meetings? Let's just scrap them. And if anyone can give me a good reason why they should stay, we'll consider it. But I can't see one, so I'm getting rid of it. And so, as part of this process, you will either have to your business will grow because the business owner can focus on bigger things, bringing in more business potentially. Um, so you'll grow, hire more people, or you're going to have to just get things out of the way. Just be completely ruthless with saying no to what isn't serving your business.
I saw something really interested that you said the other day about when you're passing on these tasks or these things to do, that that if you align that to the mission, then it's going to land much better. Like you're going to inspire people rather than just give them a fairly beige task to go on their task list.
Okay.
How important is that sort of North Star and having that mission shared and understood around the practice?
Yeah. Oh God, hugely important. So like a leader's success will hinge on whether or not they can bring people along on their mission and their journey. Um, Something that's really important, like being inspiring as a person, being an inspiring human being. People always think of these like huge role models. They might think of someone even like James Ashford, who is really extroverted, able to articulate themselves really well, people who are comfortable on stage. But to inspire someone is actually really quite scientific, quite easy, and there's a method to do it. And that method is when you're handing over a task, when you're getting, and you can start really small by just a one on one conversation, and you can apply this right up to like huge level public speaking, is when you're handing that thing over, that task, that piece of knowledge, you need to connect it to something bigger than ourselves. So it's
Right.
like, say, for example, you are handing over emails, right? I need you to be in my emails for 30 minutes a day because I can't deal with it. So I need you to do it. Is that okay? Yeah, sure. That's just a task handing over. Or,
Yeah.
look, the mission of this company is to provide proper education to our clients so that we can uplift the small business economy of the UK. and that mission, we are going to achieve that mission. But as the founder, I am really struggling to do what we need to do because I'm having to spend so much time on my emails. I think you, being this personality type, understanding that you love this kind of work, which is like, um, tick box exercises, you can feel very accomplished with this sort of work. I would love you to take that on for me. It's just a huge change, huge switch up. There's lots of different theory. There's lots of different ways of like regurgitating that theory and principle. Start with Why by Simon Sinek is one that's quite famous, where you're just kind of explaining something bigger and that before you go into the task. But yeah, as a leader, if you can't bring people along on that journey with you, you're gonna really struggle to keep people motivated.
Okay. So I guess when we think about, because it's quite transformational stuff, right? It's all hugely, hugely valuable, but I think that the risk is you might feel like too much of a big thing to do. So just to recap, so we're saying open up the books and start to show people the results of I guess the ultimate result, right, of the actions and the decisions that they make in the finances. Understand the people and their preferences, go through the senior leaders and sort of red, amber, green, the stuff that they're doing and decide what you can delegate down. And then as and when you're doing that, make sure you're connecting that to a broader mission or something that's bigger than the both of you so that people are inspired to actually go and take that on and take ownership of it. Those are all really good, like, actionable things that people can take away and go and do. What else would you add to that? What are the other things that things that they could go and do this afternoon?
So I want anyone listening to think about how often, and I see, so my mum owns a business, right? And my mum and dad, still married, live together in the same house. Um, and anytime I go home, I only probably go home like once every 6 weeks these days. Every time I go home, they come home from work and my mum will talk to my dad about the business. And usually they'll like have things to say about the employees. And what I want to challenge any business owners to do, because I'm telling you that situation because everyone will connect with that and everyone comes home from work and talks to their partner about, oh, so and so did this at work today, blah, blah, blah. A challenge for you is to have a conversation with every member of the team. And I know that's going to be tricky if you've got more than like 10, 15 people, but have a conversation with every member of your team. If you've got loads, maybe just do like your direct team that is really vulnerable and raw. So either tell them something about you that's like a deep fear of yours and ask them to share the same. So a great question that I ask the team is, what is your biggest fear right now? All guards are dropped and listen to hear that person say. Some people will give you like a personal answer. Some people will give you an answer at work. A different way of framing it up, if you're not quite comfortable asking that one yet, if you want to just kind of dip your toes in the water of getting to know your team better, is if you were to leave tomorrow, what would be the reason? If you were to hand your notice in tomorrow, what would it be? Like, what's the one thing that's really getting to you right now?
Mm.
And the reason I'm saying this is what you should go and do this afternoon is because so much can be solved in firms, in companies, in the world, if we just have better conversations.
Mhm.
And so many, like, we all love, all of us, people pleasers, conflict avoiders. We don't want to cause drama. We just want an easy life. And so we just avoid difficult conversations at all costs. And we've been told since we were born, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. And so with all that in mind, we just avoid any sort of uncomfortable conversation. But if you want to run like a real transformational business that's going to be a huge success for you, for everyone that works there, in terms of money, in terms of fulfillment, in terms of helping your clients, you're going to have to start getting good at having these difficult conversations. So go and do that with each member of your team. You might not be able to have a conversation with all of them today, but just ask some questions that you wouldn't normally ask, get to know them better, and get them comfortable with coming to you with things that are really like deeply hurting them. And what I'm trying to say is the conversations that you go home and have in the evening with your partner because it feels safe and comfortable, open them up at work.
Mm.
Start having them with the people that are involved. It will just, it'll revolutionize the way that your business works.
So I know that I can almost hear the sort of objection ringing in my ears, and you will have heard this so many times, and I've heard it as well. Talking about tech, is that they just don't have time, right? I don't have time to sit down with all my team. I don't have time to go through all this stuff. What would your answer to that be?
Yeah. My answer would be, well, do you have time to run a business that is not serving you? It's like I posted
Mm.
something like this on Instagram the other day, which was, um, firing an employee is hard. Keeping a toxic employee in your team is hard. Choose your hard.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Mm.
I've not got time to do anything. I'm like the least busy I've ever been, only because I finished work 3 weeks ago and have moved into self-employment. And it's kind of like we were talking about this before we started, but I'm on my own timelines now. So I could just wander out to the shops right now if I wanted to. I feel so unbusy, but I will still bullshit myself and say, oh, I've not got time to do that thing. It's like one of the oldest excuse in the book. So just, yeah, prioritize, of course, but just question, okay, if you're telling yourself you've not got time to have these conversations, that means you're okay with running a team. You have got time to run a team that aren't honest with each other, that don't communicate well, and you're happy to spend the time solving the problems it causes. So,
Mm.
just reframing it like that.
Yeah,
None of us, we've
fantastic.
never got time to do anything, is what I'm trying to say. Choose what the
And,
voice in your head is telling you.
and on that, we are almost out of time for the session. It's unbelievable. It feels like it's been about 5 minutes, but there's so much value in there. I'd encourage anyone watching to just go back with a notebook and just listen to it again and just pick out what you can do, but actually go and take something away with you. But um, Heather, if people want to follow you or learn a little bit more about what you're doing, what is the best way for them to come find you?
All my social media is the leadership Heather. I do loads of stuff on TikTok, Instagram, Heather Elkington on LinkedIn. But I do have a blog called In the Making Leadership, which is like really in depth. This stuff we've talked about today, you get a really in depth blog post every single week directly to your inbox. So go find In the Making Leadership for my blog, which is if you want like the real juicy stuff, that's where you need to go.
Fantastic. We'll drop a note to that in the description or the podcast notes. Heather, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. That's been fantastic. I'm really grateful.
Thanks for having me.